Hello, my friends, and welcome to Enlighten Me with Ronny. Today we are going to do a follow-up podcast with Mark Steeves from the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast. And last time you came on, we talked about your friend Amos and his pursuit of the head of Geronimo at Yale's University with the Skull and Bones organization. And we talked about who Geronimo was, and then we went off to some history, Tartaria, and Graham Hancock's version of the history and so on. Today, I'm actually my first question is going to be the Kanye West or Ye question. Who is they for you? That's I was thinking about what to ask a person that has been reading about secret societies. So I was like, maybe you have an answer. Who is day two, Mark?
Interesting. I never knew that was the West question, the yay question. Well, that's a tough, question. I don't think there's really a good answer for it. I've tried to attempt to answer that over the course of my podcast, but I think it's a war behind the scenes of different factions. So really, it depends on when we're asking that they. Nowadays, I would say, if you're trying to ask who the they is in the contemporary world, that's probably the most difficult of that version of that question to answer. So, yeah, I don't know. That's definitely not a place that I'm comfortable speculating because there's so many different areas that you can go down. I mean, the federal government, the UN, it's pretty obvious who's populating the think tanks that control those groups, federal government's kind of military industrial complex, and the UN seems to be sort of more in the pocket of the global elites. And I don't know if the global elites in the military industrial complex in America have the same idea of world domination. So that those may be two factions, but that's just two, because then there's Russia, there's China, there's all the different political factions within those groups. So I don't know.
Yeah, because myself, I've been thinking about this question, and my answer is we have a Manhattan Project going on with all the factions, and all the factions. The question is who is orchestrating them? Because when you listen to, let's say you put on YouTube and you listen to World Economic Forum, they have their own language and some terms they use, and then you listen to somebody else and they have their terms. So everybody is like a group, but somehow every group is working to one goal, and I don't know how that's possible without having some kind of Manhattan Project going on, that somebody is inching everybody in the same direction, even if they at the surface level don't seem to be connected or even talking to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely evident, when you start to look into these things, there's some sort of cooperation going on behind the scenes. It's just hard to nail down exactly who's at the top of that, I guess. It's not exactly hard to figure out who's a part of it, but how do we know that they're in charge and not just the people that they want us to know about?
Yeah, and the easy answer, I guess, is the bankers is always on the top because they own the money. If you have all the money, I guess you can do whatever you want. So that would be like the easy answer. Old
Yeah.
families that has been owning banks for thousands of years, let's say.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So we last talked, we went into the history of Yale and Skull and Bones. Today, Skull and Bones, do we know, or do we just expect everybody that went to jail and is I guess it's a male. You have to be a male to be in that Skull and Bones, or have they also begin to take in women? Do you know?
Yeah, not anymore, but for a long time, yeah, it was male only. For a while, the college itself was only for men. So within the last, I think, 120 years, maybe 110. I don't think it was very long. Women have been a part of Yale, and then since the 1960s, they've allowed uh, anyone who's a male to be a part of Skull and Bones, because it was before that exclusively white men. And then after that, I think in the 80s, they allowed women to be a part of the secret societies. So there's not just Skull and Bones, there's about 40 something secret societies, but none of them are quite as, you know, interesting as Skull and Bones. There's maybe 5 or 10 of them that are even worth mentioning. The rest of them are the same types of, fraternity thing that you have at most colleges. But very few universities have secret societies. Harvard has clubs, they don't quite function like secret societies. Some people would say they do. Some people would say they don't, but Yale kind of has the most infamous secret societies. But there are other colleges, the University of Pennsylvania, College of William and Mary, Columbia, Rutgers, Princeton, Dartmouth, Cornell. These schools all have their own versions of Skull and Bones in a sense, maybe not the same name, but a lot of them have that same symbol of a skull and crossbones. And there's even at the University of Utah a Skull and Bones who claims to be like another chapter of Skull and Bones. So yeah, it's interesting. They've spread out this secret web of fraternal connections through the college system. And it makes sense because you would want to have a system in place to filter out maybe the people who you don't want to get to the top of the power hierarchy, and the people you do want to include in that power hierarchy, people whose families that you know and trust because they're also part of your network, and then maybe people who are outside of that network but are moldable and shapeable enough to conform to the needs of the network. So it's not merely just what goes on at Skull and Bones at Yale. It has a lot to do with what these students do when they graduate. So when you consider that Skull and Bones has been around since 1832, and then a lot of the universities around the country were founded by people who came from Yale or Harvard, it makes sense that those schools would also have secret society systems within them. Uh, Maybe not, again, as infamous as Skull and Bones, but yeah, there's a huge web, and it's not just limited to men anymore. But they do have schools around the country that are men only, women only. They tend to be religious schools, but there you'll see secret societies as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking also when you talk about secret societies, what's the closest to the thing I have been a part of that is a secret society in some way, and how you build bonds is I'm Finnish, so we always get drafted in the military. And when you go out in the forest, freezing your ass off, you have your friend beside you, life sucks, but you build up a bond. And 1 month ago, yeah, I was in the military 2010, yeah. And 1 month ago, I ran into one of my best buddies in the military. He's not from here. I don't know how it even happened, but went to the bar and was like, holy shit. And we was like kids that have seen Santa, and we had super fun evening. So I guess if you go, because if I remember correctly, when I came into the conspiracy realm, I saw a video that someone had filmed from far, far away. That I think that was Yale doing a mock. They went in a sarcophagus, is it called that? And they fake killed them, and they had to be there, and then they came out or something like that. Was that Yale?
yeah, and English sarcophagus is how you say that.
Sarcophagus,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're close. You're close enough for me to understand what you're saying. But yeah, they have like a coffin or a sarcophagus, and they lay inside of it and do essentially what most secret societies do, which is take someone and bring them through a near-death experience or a mock near-death experience. And there's a huge variety in how these things are done. I mean, in tribal cultures in certain parts of the world, they'll take a young boy around like 14 or 15 and they'll have him like, in a hut by himself, whatever, right? And these elders with masks come in and they scare the crap out of him and teach him how to be a man, right? And that's kind of a part of this psychology, but it's a little bit more intricate. It's a little bit more complicated because what they're doing is they're creating a situation where a person is left with a choice to leave their old identity behind and conform to the group or not. And if you don't, I mean, obviously you're not going to be a part of it for very long. So there's an enormous pressure to conform. And a part of this conforming to the group is, adopting this new identity, this new way of seeing yourself. And you're right. You probably saw, I think ABC sent a journalist out in 2008, and they stood on top of a building next to the Skull and Bones tomb. I imagine it was the art museum, and they looked over the wall and filmed some of the activities going on in Skull and Bones's tomb's courtyard, because behind their tomb, and when I say tomb, that's kind of like a local term for the building that this secret society holds their meetings in. It's this giant brownstone, kind of Egyptian looking, temple looking, windowless tomb, right? And that's why they call them tombs, because for the most part, they don't have windows. And yeah, it's very private. If you tried to go and look on Google Earth and see, they have like all these trees in front of it that they're not actually there, but some like developer in Google went and like pasted like 3D trees in front of this so you can't see. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting part of New Haven. And that video, I believe, is showing people what really goes on there during one of their ceremonies. I imagine they probably do that ceremony indoors now after that event. Back in 2008, people didn't have phones with cameras, so it wasn't really a thought in their mind that someone would come and catch them in the act. I think if anything, they knew that the only people around New Haven at that hour were students, and all the students are sort of prepped for this kind of culture. Like they understand that there's this private secret society world, and it's best not to talk about it with other people who aren't a part of Yale. So maybe they were just brazen and they didn't care so much about people hearing screams and shrieks in the night. But now I think in the new age that we're in with, recording devices in everyone's pocket, they definitely must do those kind of ceremonies inside, and probably somewhere where you can't hear the screams, which is sort of a unsettling phrase. But yeah, 2008, somebody climbed the walls and saw that. But it's kind of reminiscent of like the Alex Jones Bohemian Grove thing. It's like this grainy footage, and best of my knowledge, that footage is real. I don't really see any reason why they would fake that. Who knows? It was ABC, so
Yeah, and do you know if the Skull and Bones have the same motto as I understand Freemasons have it, that the Freemason, like the Freemason brother, goes before even family.
mm,
So if you go into politics, that's interesting because now we have a election coming up in Finland here in a few weeks. And my girl was looking at the candidates, and one of the candidates she got, that when she took the political test, had a big Freemason sign on a chain on his chest. So they're more open to it now, I guess, that Freemasons is not that bad. Do the Skull and Bones people still show that they are Skull and Bones, or are they just not saying anything in public?
well, I think the nature of politics has shifted. So you see the reason why brotherhoods and fraternities became popular It was a cultural, political situation that led to that. Traditionally, government was run by nepotism, like passing the power within the family. And it still works like that to some degree in certain countries. But this was kind of a replacement for that, where instead of nepotism through blood, it would be nepotism through brotherhood, nepotism through membership in an order, and membership in this elitehood, right? This elite sector of society. So I think now we're seeing that change even more to where race and identity politics play a bigger factor in this kind of globalism. So maybe the brotherhoods aren't as powerful as they were. The secret societies like the Freemasons don't have the same political power that they once did. And that's why you're seeing candidates like not afraid to, sport their kind of icon and heraldry, right? They're not afraid, they're not hiding it because it's not as potent, and maybe they have other ways of organizing that aren't as obvious. So, yeah, I think Freemasonry is maybe just a victim to all movements. Time is a great defeater of any movement. So, yeah, I think Freemasons are still powerful in some respect, and they're definitely still like within government. And there's like a nepotism that comes with that in certain areas, but in others, you have this like liberal identity, I shouldn't even call it liberal. It's like far left identity politics that's kind of taking over now, and I don't know how much they respect the brotherhood thing. And that is the same factor that led to Skull and Bones bringing women and people of all identities, ethnicities into their secret societies, because they realized possibly that, times were changing and they would be, stifled out of the power hierarchy if they didn't conform to the new culture. And there's some people who probably suggest that that's because they plan the culture to unfold that way. They know that's going to happen, and they want it to happen because it's all a part of their, thinking 5 steps ahead instead of 2 steps ahead like everyone else. Yeah, that's kind of how these groups operate. So I don't know how powerful Freemasons are everywhere, but they're definitely still powerful in some parts of the world. And the whole reason why Skull and Bones even came to be was because Freemasons were completely unfashionable in the 1820s and 30s, late 1820s. There was this whole anti-Masonic movement that swept America, and we had for the first time a third political party that ran for office, and that was the anti-Masonic party. So they weren't the most successful at eradicating Masons. I mean, Andrew Jackson, I think, was president during this time, and he himself was a Mason. But at least in New England, it was pretty popular, and they got a lot of the Freemason power circles to leave New England. And maybe that's why the secret societies sort of adopted this new motif that was semi Freemasonic, but also like underground. They didn't want people to know because people had become suspicious, right? Um, this is a part of the history, this like American melting pot of West and East, mythology, occultism, political ideologies, all sort of coalescing and birthing this new way of thinking, this kind of American consciousness. So, yeah, it's elitism is kind of a part of American consciousness in a very old way. I mean, slavery was classism, it wasn't racism. I mean, there were a lot of racists around in that time. It's far more popular, I think, to be racist then, and wrongly so. But yeah, there is a elitism that is responsible for these groups more than anything, and you find religious extremists in these groups, people who have very extreme ideas about what their place in the world is and how that fits into their ideas of religion. So, and that's where you see this kind of globalism come into the main stage, because now you have people who want to manage the outcomes of things and manage the what's going to happen in the world. I mean, some people just kind of chalk it up to, oh, well, they just want control, they just want power. But really what I'm starting to see is it's a religious idea. It's more about wanting to be right with God in this sort of prophecy that they're trying to fulfill. They have these very interesting beliefs about what exactly God wants them to do. And if the public knew, I don't know how long these folks would stick around, because it's pretty insane, what their idea of God's will is and how they're going to enact it on the planet. I mean, that's why we see these wars going on in the Middle East. That's why you see the Crusades going on for hundreds of years, because they're trying to control something in Israel. They're trying to control this very significant place in their worldview.
So we're talking about those that are trying to bring on the basically the bring back God,
Right,
build the temples that is needed, that said in the Bible that is needed before his return and stuff like that.
right.
Hmm. Yeah, the when I go back a bit in the beginning of what you said, so when you said nepotism by brotherhood, that's something we talk about in Finland. We don't call it corruption. We call it bästa broder, and that means best brother or something like that. And maybe the media has been trying to say like we have a lot of Freemasons, and they couldn't say it because that's conspiracy. So they have been talking about nepotism by the best brother system, that you give your job to your buddy essentially.
Right.
But I was when we talk about the Freemasons and Skull and Bones, so I was thinking about Skull and Bones history. Like if you look at Washington or any big city, essentially anywhere in the world, you see Freemasons. You can look at they build the city as their system, and they build in the Freemason symbols in the cities, and they have their obelisk and whatever they are called, the statues and stuff like that. Do Skull and Bones, do they have anything like outside Yale? And they have presidents, of course, but
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So yeah, people who have gone on Google Earth, you can go and see like Washington D.C. You scroll around, you'll see like all sorts of things, from the street layout to the really interesting architecture, and then where that architecture is placed, where those buildings are placed in the city's landscape. And in New Haven, same thing's going on. The whole eastern seaboard of the United States was colonized around the same period for the most part, right? So you have Boston and Plymouth and New Haven, New York City, Philadelphia, Virginia, Washington, D.C. Not as versed in the whole history of the South, but as far as I know, a lot of these cities after the Revolutionary War, they began to populate with Freemasons, and then around the uh, turn of like the 1820s to 40s, there was this explosion, what we call Moorish, Egyptian, Greco revival, right? There's all these different revivals, Roman revival, Greco revival. So that's why you see, all these different styles of architecture, that look like buildings that belong in Europe or Rome, wherever, right? And with New Haven, there's a particular like occult nature to a lot of these buildings. It's Egyptian, with specific buildings that stand out. We're recording the video, so should I share my screen and just show you? Probably be a lot easier to explain.
Yeah, I would love to see if you have something.
Yeah, let me open that up right now. Because yeah, there's a big part of this mystery that I only realized through being in New Haven and just looking around and seeing things that stood out. And I thought, that must not be that common. I've been to other places in the country. It seems like there's some kind of decoding that needs to go on here. And that's what I've been doing. So let me pull this up.
Hmm. You have a whole slideshow for this.
Oh, yeah. Can you see that?
Oh yeah.
All right. So what does this look like to you? This green space here. You could see that?
This green thing is
Hold on. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right
yeah,
window.
yeah, I'm seeing it. It's like a lot of pavement walks, like pentagram style stuff.
Hmm. Right. So we have these two pentagrams here. What looks like an octagonal fountain square. Like this fountain has an octagonal base, or it's a fountain and a flagpole actually. But we have these two churches. There's a third church out of frame here towards the south end of the photo. You could see all three churches right here in this photo down here.
Okay, yeah.
And this is the center of New Haven. So the center of New Haven is this green square, right? It's this park in the center of a 9 square grid. And the 9 square grid, I'll find that slide in a moment, looks like this. So you could see this is a very old map. This is the original map of New Haven. So we have two rivers and this 9 square grid, and the entire city has been kind of shaped around this area. Okay.
Okay.
And that's significant. The 9 squares has a ton of symbolism packed into it. But let's go back to this here. So you have three churches on the green on Temple Street, which cuts the middle square into two parts. And all of these churches are facing the east, where the sun rises. This is common for temples. And this pattern of walkways, as you pointed out, that are kind of reminiscent of pentagrams, they also seem to be kind of pointing at the other 9 squares, like making one of these Western mandalas. You ever seen like a Western mandala, like a magic square? They're usually like they'll write like sigils going like from one square to another to another to another, and then those lines will be like your magic character. So when I look at this 9 square grid and the paths that cut it up like this, I think maybe they're creating some kind of spell there. So let me go to Google Earth and just show you exactly what it looks like from above. This will be probably a lot easier than just looking at one static photo. And then from there, I can probably take you guys on you and your audience on a little virtual tour of New Haven. So,
Okay, that sounds like fun.
yeah, hopefully Google Earth will cooperate. Yeah, it shouldn't be too laggy. Oh, here we go. I'm already in New Haven. Perfect. So I'm going to share my screen. Just
By the way, as a European guy here, New Haven, where in USA are we? Like,
okay. Yeah, let's zoom all the way out first.
okay, so we are
So
in the north.
yeah, so you could see the map, right?
Yep.
All right. So, yeah, here's the eastern seaboard. I live all the way over here near New York City. So that's New York City, all these concrete
Yeah.
buildings there. And you go up 95, the highway, and here we are in New Haven. So, New Haven's about an hour and a half drive from New York City, just to put that into context for your
Okay.
listeners. So yeah, we're not too far from New York City, not too far from Boston, kind of in the middle. And yeah, here is the center square. I'm gonna take away the labels so we could just see.
Okay, and Yale is also, of course,
Yeah, so Yale is
close
here.
by.
It's not that easy to see the 9 square grid until maybe if I zoom in and show you the streets that we're looking at. So here's one corner, one square, right? Here's another square. Here's another square. Here's another square. You see what I'm pointing at here? We have these 9 squares.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is common in Europe. You have like cities and towns that might have this same thing, particularly in England, because the original colonists here in New Haven were from England, and they were educated men. We have Theophilus Eaton, we have John Davenport, and then the surveyor, John Brockett. And each one of these men were educated at either Oxford or Cambridge. So they were very smart, and they surveyed the land and created this 9 square grid, which over time evolved into the city you see rendered here in 3D thanks to the folks at Google Earth Labs. So, yeah, we're going to use the Google Earth to kind of give everybody a better idea of what's going on here in New Haven. So, the tallest building in New Haven is this building right here. And it has this very interesting, like, pyramidal roof, like a triptych almost, which I always found interesting, kind of reminiscent of the Great Pyramids at Giza, right? You have the 3 pyramids next to each
Mm.
other.
What's the house? Do you know?
Oh, this is the Connecticut Financial Center. The Bank of America has office in here. Merrill Lynch has an office in here. The Connecticut State, Treasury or something like that probably has an office in there. And it's right next to City Hall. So, as you pointed to before, bankers having all the power. Yeah, banking is important in New Haven. And, New Haven's a very old city. So it's definitely been about power and wealth for a long time. The focus of the citizens here. They're people that are involved in government, people that are involved in finance, law. I mean, it's definitely a wealthy place to grow up if you are in the right circles. In the same breath, it's also a very tragic place to grow up if you're, in one of these impoverished neighborhoods that are just right next to the downtown area. But anyways, we're looking at the downtown area, and all of this is Yale. Like right here, right here, right here. This is all Yale University's campus. And for a while, Yale University actually had like a wall around it, for like I think the first 100 or so years, because they didn't want to be connected with the rest of the citizens. They were just kind of doing their own thing. And slowly that's changed. And now Yale is kind of like the backbone of New Haven's economy. So it's very important now. But uh, in the past, they've had, and still to this day, they've had a sort of touch and go relationship with the other inhabitants of New Haven. So, anyways, back to the green here. So you could see the sort of pentagram shape. There's also some other paths back here that kind of go in a similar crisscross pentagram. It's a little harder to see with all these trees, but
Yeah. And
right
Black
under.
Lives Matter if someone is not getting that message. But these are
Yeah,
really
this
new
is
pictures.
Yeah, this is new. This Black Lives Matter thing, obviously was pasted on there in 2020, but yeah, we have this green here where there's over 5 to 6,000 people buried because in the original time of New Haven, the first couple 100 years, they would bury everybody behind this church here. So you can see some of the gravestones are still preserved back here, and there's more underneath one of these churches. I think it's actually this church here. But yeah, this whole space is a graveyard. And now it's a public park that people could just walk by and have a sit on a bench or talk to some friends right next to Yale. And the reason they did this is obviously back then they didn't have a lot of land. They were confined to this small area and they were kind of afraid of everything around it. You know, before all these buildings were here, it was mostly probably woods and forest and, you know, who knows what. So they buried everybody within reach behind this church. And then eventually in the 1800s, they built this cemetery here where they buried kind of like the important people and left everyone else back here. So, why is that significant? Well, there is a certain, you know, set of people who believe that graveyards hold energy, you know, and you got to be respectful in a graveyard. And how can you be respectful if you don't even know that people are buried there, right? There's no tombstones or anything like that. So, yeah, it is odd to have this sort of, you know, right underneath the park, but maybe that adds to the energy. You know, it's almost like a burial mound in a certain respect, right? Like burial mounds have this energy to them. And I think that's true for New Haven. And that's why historically this has been a place where people come to protest. You know, Black Lives Matter, you see that. That's very obvious there. But this has been a place where people come and express their, you know, First Amendment right to free speech. Here in this courthouse here, uh, one of the Black Panthers was tried in a murder trial that, you know, he wasn't necessarily a part of, but I guess he gave some orders or allegedly gave orders for somebody to be killed, and they tried to try him for that. I think he ended up being acquitted, but that happened right here in New Haven, and the Black Panther Party held a protest on the green. So this has been a significant place. George Washington, uh, you know, marched through New Haven on his march up to Boston, and the young men who were students at Yale at the time, they lined up to salute, and those who were able to go and fight joined his troops. So yeah, going back, you know, all the way to the beginning of this country, New Haven has been historically important. The first spy in American history, Nathan Hale, comes from New Haven. He was a student at Yale. His last name was Hale with an H, not Yale with a Y, but still kind of interesting. And there's a National Guard military base that shares his name, the Nathan Hale Fort. So, yeah, kind of significant. Also, we have the Knights Templar kind of emblem here in the Knights of Columbus building. Um, Sort of an old version of the Knights Templar cross in a way.
Yeah, I would have to see a picture of the Knight Templar's cross to. The building is shaped like it, you say.
Yeah, there's sort of like maybe maybe I'm confusing this now. I misspoke when I said Templar. I have Templars on the brain. This is the Knights of Columbus building, and they call this the Knights Tower. But this shape, with the square and four circles around at each corner, I forget exactly if it was Mayan or where I saw it, but there's something to it. You know, I'll just say that for now because it's not Knights Templar. It's something else, and I don't remember, and I don't want to, you know, make something up. So, but right here where this parking lot was or is, used to stand a coliseum, a giant arena where they would have, you know, musical acts and circus and all kinds of things, sports. And they destroyed the coliseum like 5 or 10 years ago. No, about 15 years ago actually. But I remember going there when I was a kid, and it's kind of interesting. You know, it's called the Coliseum. It's right next to the Knights Tower, the Knights of Columbus, who are connected to the Catholic Church, the Catholic Church of Rome. Then they have the Roman Coliseum right there. So yeah, that's no longer standing, obviously, but this giant parking lot is kind of like a imprint of where it used to be. And yeah,
Do they have any like overt. Like in DC, I understand. I've never been in DC, but I understand they have owls on banks and stuff like that. So
Oh
you
yeah,
don't need to be like in the know to know if you
yeah,
have.
yeah.
Do you have? They have this here also.
Yeah, let me. I thank you for reminding me of your question. So here's the. I should be more accurate. So here's the cemetery gates, the Egyptian cemetery gates, and actually Google Earth probably won't be good to convey this. So I'm gonna just search it. So here's some overt symbolism. We have the Egyptian disc up there at the top. This gate, as you can see, very large, is modeled after a temple in Hermopolis Magna. There's another aspect to it that's modeled after the temple at Dendera in Egypt. So this is clearly, some kind of occult symbolism. It's America's oldest paved cemetery, and there's a long list of important people that are buried in this cemetery as well. Um, America's father of geography, America's father of actually the world's father of nuclear physics, thermonuclear dynamics, and all that. So a who's who of people. The first American dictionary, Noah Webster is buried here. A lot's going on in this cemetery, but yeah, this is kind of significant. The dead shall be raised, kind of always raises some eyebrows, and that's a biblical, quote from.
Yeah, yeah, I would take that like a Christianity thing. Like God
Well,
will come back and raise up the
yeah, but
souls or something.
paired with this kind of Egyptian gate, it's kind of interesting, right? So here's a very old photo of what it used to look like with the ivies growing over it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And there
And the
are
text
others.
was not on it originally. If you look at this, that have been put in later, or
Oh no,
maybe.
no, no. That's just the quality of the photo.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the angle, the light is kind of making it hard to see. You could kind of see it right there,
Yeah, I see something like that. Yeah.
but no, yeah, that is original. I've seen illustrations of what it was designed to look like, and that phrase has always been on it. But um, yeah, yeah, there's
Do you
one.
know what the like seahorses or whatever it's on there? Do you know what that is? Like
Seahorses.
beside the circle, it's two.
Oh, yeah, no, those are snakes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a Egyptian winged disc. It represents Ra, the sun.
Okay, yeah, because I was on a sun god. Like if I was just looking at the circle, so I was
Mm,
like, oh, it's something about the sun gods. But okay.
right. And yeah, I should say I only have till 5 my time, so I have 10 more minutes. I apologize, I didn't tell you that at the beginning. I forgot.
It's fine. It's
But let me show you this so you can see maybe some more buildings that are significant. Here on the right hand side is the Book and Snake Tomb. That's right across the street from the cemetery, and it's modeled after the Nike temple from Greece. So here's another
oh
example
yeah.
of something that's sort of right in your face and explicitly occult. It has these caduceus fence posts, and the Anthemion palmet motif is significant of sort of Greek architecture. They would often use this um, to make the columns look more, I don't know, detailed, right? So, and also the blocks are significant of masonry. These big white blocks, only a
Uh,
master mason.
the picture on the left reminds me of the World Health Organization snake.
Oh yeah, yeah, the caduceus, yeah, for sure. That's definitely a symbol that's been used by a lot of groups, and it has a exact occult meaning behind it. Um, Here's the Skull and Bones tomb. This is an older photo of it, and it kind of looks like this ancient Egyptian shrine of SETI 2. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but the triptych is a very common theme in occult imagery. And Skull and Bones used to be actually half the size. It used to be just this wing right here, and then it was eventually expanded into double the size. But yeah, it's very in your face, and it's kind of tucked away on a one-way street, so not many people will see the tomb if you're just visiting New Haven and unaware. But if you know about it, you can find it. It's not hard to find. The Beinecke Book Museum kind of looks odd, but nothing explicitly occult about it. And yeah, there's tons of other examples, and I plan on showing all of these in this documentary that I'm working on. It'll be available on a video platform, most likely Rockfin at first, but the idea is to kind of take people through this decoding process and demystifying the landscape of New Haven.
That's awesome. Do you have a date for that, or?
Yeah, the 22nd of March, because it's 322, Skull and Bones' symbolic number.
Oh, now when you remind me of 322. Is that on some bill? I heard someone say it was on maybe the $20 bill or something.
Hmm.
322.
That I didn't know. I'd have to look into that. As far as I know, there's a couple of different interpretations of it. Some people think it's an expression of when they were founded, because they were founded in 1832, and they're the second chapter of a German organization, so 32-2, right? Then there's other people who say that has to go with the biblical passage. I think it's something 3 line 22. I'm not like versed in the biblical phrases and work enough to know it off the top of my head. I ought to have that written down. But no, there's a particular passage in the book of Revelations that 322 is a reference to, potentially. And then some people think it goes back to Demosthenes, who was a Greek um, sort of Platonist, or sort of member of these mystery cults. And that's essentially what Skull and Bones is a mystery cult, the same type that they had in Greece. So in a way, this is an expression of Western esotericism, the university system itself. It's a continuation of what went on in Greece, and that has a big deal to do with what, or that's pretty much because of the fact that that's what these students were studying. They were studying the classics. They were studying Roman and Greek literature, so they wanted to mimic what they saw in these books, so they sort of revived these cults in a way. And some people think that, well, maybe these cults had just been around for thousands of years, and this was a way of that for them to come back into society, guised under this sort of revivalist movement, but really they're just continuing what they've been doing in secret now, with the select few who make it to the university. Because outside of getting a scholarship, it's pretty difficult to get into a lot of these schools. You need wealthy parents, or good luck, or really really good grades, and I think there's a certain case to be made that people who have really good grades aren't exactly the brightest, and that's not true for everybody. But there's a certain aspect of the education system that shifted, at least here in America, where they're looking for people who are great at commands. They want people who are good at, regurgitating information, repeating what's told to them. They don't want people who can critically think or creatively think. I mean, God forbid you creatively think. And I think that's a big reason why America's in like a little bit of a stalemate right now, because we have this big faction of of a generation that just wanted to be creative, almost to the point where they stalemated industry. Now there's like all this talk of, oh, there's not enough people to get jobs. And it's because all these people want to be creatives, and you just can't run a society with only creatives. You need, you know, people who are skilled in trades, and that's not necessarily creative work all the time. And I think they've like kind of beat that mentality of work, 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 work into people so hard that they rebelled against it in this digital age. And now we're seeing some of the consequences of that in the United States. But I think the secret societies are, sort of a part of managing how those ebbs and flows, unfold.
Definitely, definitely. That, and also when you talked about the schools and you get your grades, that's why I said in the beginning that I think we are living in a Project Manhattan, because they push people into specific things and then they don't know actually what they're working on, but somebody is, because it's moving forward. But yeah, we're coming up on the end here then. So yeah, the documentary, I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to watch that for sure. And that's exclusive on Rockfin, or
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how the format's going to come out. The idea is to put out, a couple episodes of a audio podcast that lead up to this video version of a documentary, but it's all going to be one project, and then the first emanation of it will be released on the 22nd of this month. So stay tuned for more updates on that. I've already done a bunch of interviews. The next phase is like orchestrating, and producing those interviews into a sort of narrative, and then having images to go with that, and that'll be the documentary. So yeah, a little bit of behind the scenes there, and I apologize for being brief today. I didn't realize that I'd have to go so soon. I got a text from my girlfriend saying she needs a ride. But we can reschedule another chat and pick this up where we left off, maybe sooner than we did last time, so it's a little fresher, and I'll have a little more energy. I'm kind of swamped today, and we'll get further into this topic. What do you think?
yeah, that sounds like a plan. And yeah, don't worry, we got an hour and it was fascinating. I think I've had some remembering that you had some kind of presentation, but I didn't really know. And then you pulled it up, so I'm like, oh yeah, good of me to
Well,
ask the right question.
yeah, I pull these slides up because it helps me kind of convey what I'm talking about, because there's so much information that I just kind of get lost sometimes. And yeah, I need to update this slideshow a bit, but yeah, the slides that I did show are definitely good to go. And I'm glad you had me on. I'm glad you're interested in this. I'm sure this same scenario is going on in cities in Europe too. And if you have European listeners who find my, uh, presentation interesting, they find things that add up in their area, like a pattern. They see, oh, this is the same as what he was talking about on this show. Uh, get in touch with me. I'd love to hear about that. I don't know much about cities in Europe. I've never been to Europe, but I'd love to see if that kind of thing is going on in Europe as well. And maybe we can compare and contrast how things are here in the States. And I'm sure you have listeners in the States as well. If they are here in the States, they can come up and visit me in New Haven and get a tour, and I'll give a tour for free of the of New Haven. I like doing it; it's fun. So just get in touch with me while it's still free, because in the future I'll probably charge for it once I get better at it.
That's awesome. So yeah, put your website links, whatever you wanna call out, and
Mm.
we'll see you next time when I see you.
Right on. Thank you, Ronnie. I appreciate it. My family thinks I'm crazy.com is where they can go to follow up with me. That's all you need to leave with them.
One sec before you go. When is the app coming for the Alt Media United? I heard you talk. You mentioned it on some podcast I listened to today, I think.
An app?
Yeah, did you guys work on that or? Is it
Yeah, that's
coming?
the idea. We want to have an app, but no, we're nowhere near like we're working on it, but yeah, no like idea of when that's going to come to fruition. But that's the plan, is to get an app going for Alt Media United. Yeah. Episodes, we've released episodes already of Alt Media United. It's its own podcast now, but no app yet. No.
Okay. Because I was excited. I was like, yeah, they have like a 100 podcasts. It would be great. But yeah, well, thank you, and Mark, and I'll check the schedule and see when we can pick up where we left off.
Right on.
Yes, have a great day.
You too.